Happy to be here with you today. Thanks, Chris, to put so much pressure on us, as I already said. It was, and thanks for, Tommy and Sarah Lisa for the presentation before. So we stay in the hydro world, but going through hydroelectric to hydrokinetic. And so first, I will start by introducing myself. So Fabienne Joly, I'm Director of Development for ORPC, which stands for Ocean Renewable Power Company. We are a hydrokinetic turbine developer, and I'm with ORPC for almost 3 years now. And before that, I worked for the municipality of Lac-Mégantic. So that's why you also see that I will talk about this project just with my perspective, not the whole project, but just my perspective. And I have a background in economic development with more than 15 years experience in France before I moved in Quebec 9 years ago. So that's a bit of who I am. So I will share, I would say, the perspective of an industrial industrial company in collaborative projects today. And experience on community engagement, business development, and collaborative research. So we already start with acknowledgement from Aphrodite this morning. It works? Okay, perfect. I just let this slide because we used to do this acknowledgement, and that's a nice picture. I see you smile, Chris. In fact, as we already done this acknowledgement, I can just maybe share about on the picture. It was a water ceremony we did when we've deployed our first turbine in Manitoba 2 years ago. So with an elder from the local community and a young Indigenous liaison woman, Tara, we work with. And so you can see myself just smudging. And so what it means for us that really to create this relation, to develop this relation with people who own the land finally, and who work with to develop a solution and to bring a solution in this decarbonization, energy transition issue challenges we are all facing. So that's why we are acknowledging, but I wanted also to share this small story. I will share a bit about ORPC, but I don't want to dive too much in the technology today. I think it's not exactly the subject, but I think you need, and it's better if you understand who we are, what's the solution, what's the technology, to understand the messages I want to share later. So ORPC, sorry, I just have the mic in front of my notes. So ORPC, it's a U.S. company headquartered in... Oh, that's great. So someone... Thank you very much. I feel like really like a special guest. Thanks, Daniel. So, as I said, ORPC it's a U.S. company, already founded 20 years ago. Last week, we had our 20th anniversary. So important to understand, because it's a long journey to get here. Headquartered in Portland, Maine, 45 employees, subsidiary in Canada. I'm part of the Canadian team based in Sherbrooke. Also people in Ireland and in Chile, and part of the US team in Alaska too. So we are developing solution. Hydrokinetic means that we are creating power, electricity from the current from water or tides. Also integrated this solution in smart microgrids. We're also, part of our vision is also to be part of the economic development, exactly as Tommy and Sarah Lisa shared through this energy project. It's also for communities and for all the stakeholders regaining energy sovereignty and social development, etc. So that's also part of our vision. So just to give you a size of the turbine, that's the turbine on the ReefGen. So you see a man working on the turbine. Quickly about the product portfolio of ORPC. So the ReefGen you see on the left for you is the one we've already deployed in a few locations. And as you see, we also have other product, stem turbines. So the know-how of our engineers mainly are in the design of the turbine and standing in different frame, different design to address the river environment, but also tides with the TideGen and the Optimor. So if you have questions, maybe we can come back later, but I don't want to spend too much time on that right now. So on this map, you can see the turbines, the devices we already have deployed. So we have 2 turbines in Alaska. I will say a bit more about this project, which is our more famous pilot project. We have 1 turbine in Manitoba. We've deployed, as I mentioned, 2 years ago with the CHTTC, the Canadian Hydrokinetic Test Turbine Center. Right now, we are deploying 1 turbine in Chile, in Patagonia, also in a remote community. And we also work with our smaller turbine, the modular ReefGen in Millinocket, Maine, just downstream a dam. And also we'll deploy 2 more later this year or next year, depending on how the project goes, in the Mississippi River. And you see also the Optimor, which is in test in Europe, and the STS single test turbine, so to address tidal environment in Eastport. So once again, I go very fast. I know that if you have more questions, I can come back. Just my point, and what I highlight this different deployment. It's because where we are as a company, ORPC, I mentioned we are 20 years. The company have 20 years this year. And what's important for us now is to get devices in water. That's really what makes us accelerate the learning curve and to be able to improve, to validate technical assumption, technical design. So that's what's important. So one point to also be important to understand, talking about hydrokinetic, and in fact it's the same for hydroelectricity. And Chris also mentioned that we have the chance to have this big battery, in fact, with water. And as Tommy also explained, that the size of storage in terms of battery could be very huge. So it's very important to combine intermittent production sources like wind and solar with hydro, or with what we call base load. So source of production that can power a community or any infrastructure 24/7. So a stable, predictable source of energy. And that's what our too early. That's what are producing hydrokinetic. And so the 2 ReefGen here you can see on the map. And what's important to understand, it can really allow to displace diesel. So it's very important in the mixed energy to contribute to the decarbonization. But in this case, and so something that I haven't mentioned is the design of our turbine, who really operate under the ice, and it makes the technology relevant for northern Canada, for Arctic climate. I'll say more on our project in Igiagig, but also it brings some challenges when we work in remote community, and it's definitely reliability. So, and to improve this reliability, that's where research project, collaborative project makes sense. So a few words about our project in Igiagig. So Igiagig, it's a remote, very remote community in Alaska, 80 people, and it's a story of a long relationship started when the chief of the community, Alexandra Salmon, reached out to ORPC. They already built their strategic plan in energy transition, and they wanted to see, okay, how we can produce energy from water. But that's drinkable water, that's hey, come on. I speak too much, maybe. Slides are going faster than me. So yeah, they are fishing in the river. This is drinkable water for them. So no way to have any impact. And so the team, our engineering team, started to work with the community almost 10 years ago. And it really leads to the design of the turbine as it is today. And so we've deployed a first turbine, a first ReefGen, that's the name of this device, in 2019, so 5 years ago, and a second one last summer. So that's the two turbines you can see on the picture. One still floating before deployment, and the other one underwater, because when it's in operation, it's ready underwater. That's why we use virtual reality to showcase, and when it really put the brain of Chris upside down with this virtual reality last year. So what we've learned from this project, and what we've demonstrated with this project, that's, as I said, we can operate under the ice as we are underwater, and it's already set the record as the longest operating river hydrokinetic device in the Americas. Really a great availability, almost 100%, and also no impact on marine life. And it's also allow navigation above the turbine. So that's for the introduction, in fact, of ORPC, just for you to understand a bit about the context. And right now, that's where it starts to be more in deep in the analysis of collaborative project. Let me just drink a bit of water. So what I want to share with you, in fact, it's how we get there. For 20 years, as I said, it was kind of a long journey through development and innovation challenges. And ORPC team, as I mentioned, I joined ORPC just 3 years ago, so it was already a long journey when I joined. So engineers work very hard on the technology, the design, all the technological part, and it's really for a startup or an industrial partner, it's very usually the key to work on the technology. So about efficiency, reliability, also cost reduction, but it's not the only topics or aspect we have to work on, and I put some other like an example, and we already addressed a bit of that in the previous presentation. So talking about regulatory community engagement, and my point here is technology is part of the solution, but it's not enough. It's not the only thing that will bring us to decarbonization. And we have to be aware of that, because if we are not address the other topics, project will be very difficult to bring to a success. And I'm really convinced on that. And that's also what I've learned from Lac-Mégantic, for example. I will share a bit later. So I want to share a few examples on collaborative project our team at ORPC are involved with, just like, example, and to show how we work and what kind of skills and collaboration it brings in our team. So if I go through, as I mentioned, we're active in Europe. So just to mention, in Europe, for example, we are working on the bigger turbine, so really involved with academic partners, Queen's University of Belfast, and project funded by the Horizon 2020 program and some other European programs. So in fact, this project, X-Flow project, is the last stage of multiple years collaboration between different partners, academic, but also composite materials manufacturers and developers, and to really, for us to optimize the design of the flow. So here we are really talking about a project about optimizing the technology in this case. And so the outcome will be that this summer, the turbine will be deployed at the Queen University Belfast test site. So it's already a big achievement. Very interesting also to see how in Europe, in terms of marine energy, they build this kind of test infrastructure to be able to advance the technology. Another project I want to mention, collaborative project in this case, the partnership we announced last year with Shell. So in this case, a big company, really dedicated in fossil fuel. When we heard Shell, we say, "Hope, I'm not sure," but they are also investing huge amount of money to advance and support renewables, to decarbonize their operations, but also to support largely the energy transition. So in this case, we are benefiting of that, and we're part of the pool of partner in a pilot project to test and demonstrate the scaling of our device into Mississippi in this case, and further into major rivers. So I showed the product pipeline, and you've seen the power of each turbine between 40, 80 kilowatt. So it seems to be not that powerful, but with this project with Shell, we are talking about deploying farms of turbine, of ReefGen, of modular ReefGen, so to reach megawatts scales project. So that's what makes sense. And in this case too, for example, the Louisiana State University is also a partner to add specific skills on-site characterization and monitoring. So once again, big company, SMEs, ORPC, also academics together to advance the technology and site characterization. So we also enter in the process development of the project. Still in technology-wise development project, a big project for us starting this year, in fact, the American Tidal Energy Project. So in US, the DOE's Department of Energy, and Chris, you've mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act, there's $1 million on the table and investing in project to really support development of marine energy and largely renewables. So this American Tidal Energy Project is part of the American-US strategy in marine energy, and ORPC is leading this project with partners to bring marine energy, in this case tidal energy, to commercial stage. So what I want to show you through this project, once again, my goal is not for you to go through this list of deliverables, is much more to go through, okay, we are doing some collaborative project to develop the technology, but with this kind of project is also really to cover the whole process and all the topic of the development of a project. So the technical demonstration, for sure, with the project management plan, demonstration of the technology, engineering, technology selection, etc., but also community outreach, benefits plan, permitting and regulatory affairs. So to achieve these goals, to be able to produce all these deliverables, all the project stakeholders have to be seated around the table, and that's what's important. So when we talk about stakeholders, all the stakeholders are involved in this project. So there's different technologies, not only ORPC technology, but also so private technology developers, but also engineering firms. We are also working with Hatch, academics, so university from Alaska, but also from elsewhere in US, and also economic development corporation, representing and connecting with the community. And an example of kind of barriers we are addressing through this project, for example, is definitely ice. I mentioned with the project in Igiagig, we've demonstrated that we can operate under the ice, but the thickness of the ice, how it moved, etc., that's always an issue. So more and more we learn, more and more the technology will be reliable, and so we will be able to produce stable and reliable energy. And all the sediment. So what's basically the impact on the environment? So just turning on just on the previous slide, I mentioned addressing the different barriers. Because the objective is always to get the technology more and more reliable, as I said, and to accelerate the path to the commercialization, to be able to decarbonize. Always the same objective in mind. So very important. And on the previous slide also, I mentioned collaborative project is a key for technology development, but also for regulatory. And I want to use this example to explain how we address environmental barriers. And in this case, I will dive a bit more in the project we have in Igiagig in Alaska, and about stakeholders engagement. So the project in Igiagig is the first US FERC license for an hydrokinetic project held by a tribal community. So it's a big achievement for an indigenous community, 80 people community, but it was once again a long journey. So I want to just address this and once again give it like an example. So the adaptive management approach, is there some of you are familiar with this kind of management approach? Yeah, Jennifer? Okay, probably it's quite well known in the academic world, maybe. So it's not new. ORPC hasn't invented anything, but it's something that's very, very useful, and it works very well in innovation process. So basically, it's an incremental process who allow to adjust and integrate learning all along the decision-making process, in fact. So that's why I like the circular schemes that really show that. And it's a method ORPC used to lead with the community all the FERC. So FERC is a federal regulatory agency we had to work with to get the permits to be able to put the device in water in Igiagig, in Alaska, and to develop this pilot project. So it's really allowed to develop, to manage, and retire risk. And it's really based on consistent and open communication. And that's really my point. So this adaptive management approach for the project in Igiagig, you see here the different stakeholders. So the Igiagig village was really leading and is still leading, because the adaptive management team, it's still in place. So they're really leading this approach and this work, supported by ORPC, by my colleague in charge of regulatory affairs, the engineers, development people also, and to connect with federal regulatory agency locally and federally and at the federal level, and supported also by technical experts. And that's also very important to understand the role of these technical experts as they bring a third-party perspective to address what we have to demonstrate to get this license. So it leads to a very robust fish monitoring plan to monitor the interaction between the turbine and the salmon, the sockeye salmon. It was really, as I mentioned, a collaboration with different subject area experts to monitor the technical impact. So just going through the role of the different experts, University of Alaska Fairbanks, for example, for the underwater video camera monitoring, also PNNL, maybe some of you are collaborating with them in US on fish detection software development. Also Marine Situ, the University of Washington for real-time object detection. So really, what it shows here that we're talking about marine energy, but there's a lot of software, there's a lot of different skills and topics around to make sure the turbine is operating, is efficient, but also it has no impact around. And for sure, the most important and the real fish expert, and I like when one of my colleagues were working very closely with the community, Igiagig, always says that the real fish experts are the community, the village, the fishermen, because they really monitor this resource very closely, as there's the fish they are eating, so they don't have choice. But it's also linked to what Tommy and what Chris said previously about the local knowledge and all the knowledge we have to put together to bring this kind of project to success. And in fact, what we observe that all the project fish monitoring results to date have really verified the Igiagig's people own assessment of fish. So they already know what we've demonstrated and what we've monitored. In fact, that's very nice to see. So the takeaways about this approach really demonstrate that there's no effect identified, and working with third parties, so technical experts, working with the community, the community leading this process, I would say, really was a key to convince and to reinsure the regulatory agency in US. So right now we are also trying to develop this same kind of relation with the Department of Fisheries and Ocean in Canada. That's also a challenge, but that's part of the process. So about this adaptive management approach, it really allows, in this case, to resolve the risk for adult salmon. So it was a big achievement for the project, for the community, to make sure it won't have any impact, but also for ORPC to demonstrate that. And so right now, the adaptive management team will still meeting every quarters, if I'm right, to continue to monitor as we deployed a second device. It will need to, the monitoring plan will need to be adapted. So just few outcomes and preliminary conclusion about adaptive management approach. So definitely early and consistent engagement with stakeholders and regulators is necessary. So put everyone around the table. Adaptive management approach or similar are recommended. That's why from this experience in US, we bring it in Canada, trying to develop this kind of relationship with the DFO and with other stakeholders to use this same kind of collaboration. And utilize resource experts to lead data acquisition and processing. So part of you that could be involved, who could be involved in this kind of process. So high level skills, that's really wonderful to have that around the table, and definitely more deployment needed to continue learning and resolving risk. That's what I say at the beginning of the presentation, that we need to get devices in water. So very, very important. It's not the end. I don't know where I am in terms of time. Is that okay? That's perfect. Any question from now before I turn to community engagement? Okay, perfect. Just take time to drink a bit. So I cannot go through this kind of presentation without talking a bit more about community engagement. And people who know me will know why. Because, yeah, as I said before, I'm really convinced that technology is part of the solution, what I say, but technical solution has to be to serve human and how we live and the fact that we want to keep living in this planet. So technology need to address and to work for community. And I really like what was shared this morning about what's a community, finally. So in this sense, community engagement, I mean more, local people at a sense of human living together, but we can of course see community as also part of a industrial cluster or a different level. But I think my conclusion is still relevant, so that's fine. And so just linked what I said before about adaptive management approach with community engagement. This FERC license was definitely a great achievement for the Igiagig Village Council, IVC. And this project already started because of the community was ready. They already developed a community energy plan. They were involved for many years in energy transition. And so this kind of project, a bit like in Ujuak with Tommy and Sarah Lisa, where the community is already engaged. And you see where I go probably, but what I want to share here, it's I have two experience with the ORPC. We work with this community in Alaska, very engaged. But in my experience with Lac-Mégantic, as I mentioned, I work for the municipality on the energy transition strategy, and I've initiated and developed a microgrid project with Hydro-Québec. So with a big team around us, around the municipality, around me, but with a very different context. And what I observe that the community can really be already engaged, or we have to to build the capacity of the community and to develop a project. So it's different context. So before getting to the conclusion or to the analysis of that, just a word about the Lac-Mégantic microgrid project. From the different discussion I had, I understand that many of you have already heard about this project. For them who maybe don't know, Lac-Mégantic is a small city, 3 hours driving from here. I'm still living here with my family. And so that's in the city center of this small community, this small city, 7,000 people. There was a train tragedy 10 years ago. So who knows that? So I know, everyone. I'm traveling around Canada. Sometimes it's not that well known, but that's the story of this small city. And in fact, that's what makes me cross the ocean with my family to contribute to the reconstruction and to be part of the reconstruction team. So I bring my background in economic development, working on photovoltaic and smart grid area sectors. And so I started working on for the municipality. And to do a short story, I met a few people and we observed and we decided to design or to offer the municipality to start this project of microgrid. It's really a short story, but so this project, different ideas putting together, I would say, and different lights and energy leads to a microgrid project. So with solar panel on the rooftop of the sports center, energy storage from Evlo, and also energy management, controllers and automation devices in building. So that's for the technical part. What's interesting to understand in this project in terms of community engagement, it's a context and the background of the project. So, as I mentioned, the train tragedy and the reconstruction of Lac-Mégantic, the city center, was where the vision of the reconstruction started around energy transition. And what makes sense, that was to really put the fossil fuels away from the city center. So to rebuild in a more environmental preservation vision, and so really to have this energy transition, to accelerate this energy transition. So with the reconstruction team, we've deployed a strategy. We've developed at this time a strategy around energy transition. It was more economic strategy, and that's what makes us approach like Hydro-Québec. So in fact, the partnership between the city of Lac-Mégantic and Hydro-Québec started because of the municipality of Lac-Mégantic approach Hydro-Québec. And so ultimately, the idea of this project was really to become a living lab. And that's where the project is going. My point here is this groundbreaking project benefiting an engaged community. What was at this stage, so 8 years ago now, the engagement, the level of engagement of the community, that's what is interesting to understand. Oops, sorry, I didn't want to go there quite soon. So the community, if we come back, it was 2 years after the tragedy, and it was the community people in the city center in Lac-Mégantic were very sensitive. They were rebuilding themselves in the healing process, and so, to be honest, the energy transition was not at the top of their head. They were more in their heart, and that's fine. But what I mean is there was a strategy in terms of economic development, marketing, etc., who allowed to start this project. But the community was not that engaged. And it brings through objectives for the city and for Hydro-Québec that was defined to develop a plan, a working plan. And the question is, did the low level of community engagement was a reason for the project to fail? The response is no. So my point here is the partner are different objective, definitely. As you see here, the objective of the city of Lac-Mégantic are definitely much more an economic development of smart city, technological hub, etc. And for Hydro-Québec is really a technological demonstration and integration into the grid, etc. And I think what's very important in this kind of project, and what I want to show is also, you remember the slide before with the community push and community pull context of project. It's even if the community is not that engaged, we can always identify a leader and what is very important from my perspective and my experience now for 20 years working with people and human in energy transition is to understand where each person, each people are to really adjust communication or the level of what we have and what we need to share and what kind of capacity we need to build with each group of person. Some indigenous community like in Ujuak are already really advanced in the comprehension, in the understanding of what they need to do, what you need to do, because you are living that day to day. The climate change are so obvious in the north. Sometimes, like in Lac-Mégantic, it's not mandatory, I would say, to change, but we have to do that now. And it's really an emergency, I would say. But this kind of project in Lac-Mégantic is really important to advance knowledge of Hydro-Québec. And what we observe now, almost 8 years after we signed, no, it was in 2019, so 6 years after we signed the agreement, I still say after the city of Lac-Mégantic signed the agreement with Hydro-Québec, is the community and more people are aware of the need to transition to EV, for example, to take a bike better than a car, or to consume locally, etc., etc. All this aspect. So. Just to conclude on this community engagement part, is really understand where people are, what they are aware of, to be able to adjust and to adapt the capacity building activities and community engagement activities. So there's always a solution. So that's the final conclusion. So what's the key benefits for ORPC in collaborative project? As I said, definitely de-risk the technology to be able to be more reliable, benefits from very high level expertise, because as a startup, it's very rare that we can already hire that high level people that you are in labs, like in voltage partners. Identify and address barriers to commercialization, accelerate the path to commercialization. That's really the word, I think, in the industry today, and definitely early engagement with all stakeholders. And the final of the final is definitely keys to success, and all these projects are complex. We already had this very rich discussion this morning. collaboration brings interdisciplinarity. We see that today and in this kind of workshop. And interdisciplinarity brings complexity. And we really have to be aware of that, because if we just start working together and say, okay, these people will think as I am. No, because you are saying something, but the people in front of me, for example, won't understand the same. That's what I want to say. So that's very important. And so once again, early stakeholders engagement to develop this knowledge of each other and really understand the skills, the expertise, the level of engagement of each stakeholders, and it leads to define clear, shared, and approved work plan. So I really insist on that, but from my experience, I think that's really key. And from a very human and more social aspect, and I like what we are doing today and the energy in the room today. It's really, I think, listen to each other to really understand. So I stop here with all my respect for you, empathy and humility, and thanks for your attention. So if you have any question, I will be happy to answer, or comments for sure.
Great. Thank you very much.
Attends.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you are bring us another technology that people are not doing about. Just I'd like to learn about, of course, what does you want to work with a startup with? This startup belong to Megantic City. What's the structure of this startup? So I cannot see.
You mean ORPC?
Yes, I cannot see the funders, and I'm looking also.
There's no connection between Lac-Mégantic and ORPC. Just myself living in Lac-Mégantic, but no, that's very different. Two different project or things. Or ORPC, it's a U.S. company that was founded in Portland, Maine, 10 years ago, and Lac-Mégantic is the project I describe as, and you know.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sorry for the confusion if there was one.
Thank you very much. It was an outstanding presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
What I'd add, Fabienne, is that, ORPC is working with Indigenous communities in Canada. Fabienne's talking about the project in Alaska, but there's also projects elsewhere in Canada.
Yeah.
And so I think it's the partnership side where innovation in Voltage can work with companies. So we want to have the issue that the collaboration can work with the companies, with Indigenous communities, and how it ties together.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much, Fabienne. Very good presentation. The question that I have, since you did studies on fish, were there any studies on beluga whales or any kind of species of whales? Because I see a very good application in the Ungava Bay region, where they have some of the highest tides in the world. So I would just like to know if there's any studies on whales, actually, because I see a very potential application in the Ungava Bay communities. Thank you.
Yeah, there's some, we are starting or already doing some kind of desktop about belugas in Alaska. And I know that's not exactly always the same species. Belugas are, it's a big family. But there's also, different studies that was already done. And I totally agree there's a huge potential in the Ungava Bay. We are already in contact with Joy Lance and his team from Utakuti and a few people from Kangirsuk and Kuujjuaq. So I know they are doing right now community engagement, but last year we did studies with Hatch, with Michel Caro and his team. And so, yeah, hopefully the community will be interested also with this kind of, with this technology, as it can, be in addition to wind or just to allow to produce renewable energy as the run-of-river kind of project you did in Kuujjuaq. But so totally agree. If you want to spread the message, also I will be happy. It will be very supported. Thanks, Tommy.
Thanks, Fabienne. A very nice presentation, very informative, especially on the community engagement. Now, with all these multidisciplinary topics we are dealing with, very often, how do you find, is there a way to accelerate the process by transferring lessons learned from one project to another?
Good question. I think, as I said, and that's why I conclude by listen, listen, and listen. It seems to be kind of very simple and say, okay, it's obvious, but it can really allow to compress time, to save time in terms of learning from each other as quick as possible. With few meetings, workshop, put all the stakeholders together as soon or as early as we can in a project. And what I can add, and it's also, I push on some discussion from this morning, is to identify if there's a momentum in a project. We are talking about living labs. Sometimes a community or the research in a lab, etc., is not ready yet to be deployed, or the community, the political context, for example, is not it's not the right moment. So as early as we identify this kind of barriers or constraints, and as soon as we can adjust or just put our effort in the right place or with people who are ready to. And so that would be my recommendation.
I agree. Okay, thanks.
Oh, all right. Thank you. I see it's not only waves, it's also rivers.
Yeah, definitely, rivers and tides.
And my next question is then, for off-grid, how many of them do you need to make a good impact on going green? And for each river, because there's so many different sizes, what sizes are the best for small river, big river? Like, how many would you need?
Yeah. So we don't need anything. Community needs energy production. But yes, a very, very good question. For the ReefGen, you saw, so the one we've deployed in Igiagig, we need 3 to 5 meters deep depth river, and the velocity, water velocity, which is the best, is between 1.5 meters per second to 3 meters per second. So it's already quite a good velocity. There was another part to your question. How many? Yeah, how many? To give you an example, so one ReefGen is between 40 to 80. If I give the example of Igiagig, Alaska, for this 80 people community with a school and an hospital, the 2 ReefGen we've now deployed, it will allow to displace 60 to 90% of the diesel. So it really have a great impact in terms of getting greener. But as I said, with a project with Shell using the modular ReefGen, right now we are studying and moving to, or it can be another kind of project, to have 1, 2, or even 50 of this device deployed, for example, in the Mississippi River or in the St. Lawrence River, to produce 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt, depending on for sure velocity and the need. So there's, we are talking now in megawatts, but for remote community already with 1, 2, I'm working in project in Yukon, for example, and we are talking about 7 ReefGen, for example, to really make an impact in a community. So does it answer your question? Thank you. One more?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your excellent presentation. I have a question like you, looking at the locals and from a community perspective. The sense of deep survival is critical for the community.
Mm-hmm.
When do you see the tip of turning of the resistance? Like the first presentation, it was inclusive goal. The second one is like, in the first presentation, I'm talking about your presentation. Mm-hmm. And then even in your presentation, one is inclusive goals, but the other one is diverse goals, like conflicting someone from the corporate, the research, the community. How do you deal with it in practice with your example?
Yeah. So you reference to Lac-Mégantic, probably. So yeah, in this case, what I've experienced is we can still move a project forward even if the community is not that engaged. And what we've experienced, what we've worked on is really in an early stage, just communicate. So deploy kind of basic communication, but for people to understand. So be able to deal with maybe first identify if there's any opponent, and if there's always in the community, just deal with, answer question. And that's what Tommy said also, be ready to answer question, because uncertainty is the worst in community, and it definitely raises constraint and opponents. So really build a communication plan, and once a project is more and more real, start the community engagement, and with people who are already aware and already convinced of the project, and it will spread the message among the community. And transparency is always the key. That's my experience.